Hello, sports fans.
I'm not sure if we're sports fans or if we're just neighborhood council fans, but we'll take it from there.
That's actually an obscure movie reference.
Was that Anchorman?
The Great Santini.
Great Santini, Robert Duvall.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Oh, awfully red.
Jeffrey looks very sad in that picture.
I'm happy as can be in that picture. That was at Patsy's in New York.
Ooh.
And right next to me is
the
statue of the chairman.
I see James Cagney behind you.
Yeah, it is one of the all-time greats,
wow.
if not the. I'm pensive as I go upstairs to eat cannoli cake. It's, if you've never been there, it's worth it. It's, you know, it's fun.
Well,
and the statue of Frank Sinatra on the bar right here is sort of tells you what you're getting into.
Well, you made it to the first Monday of October. You still survived.
Yes, didn't we?
Not sure what the Supreme Court's going to do from neighborhood councils, but we'll find out.
What did they do?
No, I'm wondering what they're going to do. The mischief doesn't start until first Monday of October. So
you mean is there a case that would affect us? You mean?
Not directly, but they may tighten rules when it comes to, well, the federal.
You mean the Supreme? I'm sorry.
A Brown Act.
So I guess we can start at 6:02 p.m. and I'll call the meeting to order and do roll call. Barry Johnson, I'm here. Jeff Carter.
Here.
Rick Rosner.
Here.
Susan Hammer is excused. Richard Niederberg.
Here.
Brandon Marino.
Here.
And Scott Mandel.
Present.
Okay, we do have a quorum. And next item is approval of September 1st Government Affairs Committee meeting minutes. If I hear no objections, I'll consider them approved. Any objections?
No.
Okay, approved. Thank you. Update by the committee chair. So as you know, we had some motions for the August board meeting. And because that meeting ran late and I had to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning, a few hours after that meeting, we postponed it until those GAC items until the next meeting, which we thought was going to be in September, but that meeting wasn't held due to a holiday and it wasn't rescheduled. So it's hopefully going to be on the October board meeting agenda. So that includes the motion that we did on an assembly bill that wants cities and counties greater than 250,000 to take both public comment, both in person and remotely. The reason we objected to this is that it was an unfunded state mandate, and we just didn't feel the state should be telling us to do something they're not going to fund. Our next motion has to do with the 405 freeway, high occupancy lanes. The comments that we can send in for that have actually closed, but I have found out from the person taking comments that they'll still take ours after our board meets the third week in October. So we'll still have that on the board agenda. And our third one was that we were enforcing, we were supporting investigating the enforcement that over 35% of advertised short-term rental listings have been illegal since the home sharing ordinance went into effect. And these illegal short-term rentals have removed over 7,300 housing units from the city's long-term housing market supply. So those will be hopefully on our next board meeting agenda to be voted on. And that's pretty much the only update I have. I'll go to number 4, public comments. I don't see any members of the public. Do any of our committee members wish to make a public comment on anything? Okay.
Wait till we get to the, but I'm
Yeah.
just, I've been reading, the housing shortage is, national, which led to all sorts of like renter applicant abuse. And I'm sure all sorts of like 50 other abuses that you'd get under a shortage. And then I looked at California's statutes, which prevent some forms of like deposit abuse. But I'm wondering if, as a general subject, we should, take a look at any shenanigans that, abuse people trying to buy houses or rent a place.
Yeah, well, the motion that we have is supporting the city doing that investigation.
Right.
So, yeah, I agree with you.
But there are dozens of other ways that people who need housing can get screwed over.
Yeah. On the flip side, there are dozens of ways people can, particularly with all the COVID programs, there are ways people that don't qualify but have gotten support, money for rents and other things illegally too. So there's a flip side to this. There's, crooks on both sides. But okay, I guess I see we have one guest now. Does anyone else have a public comment?
I think that the result of
Press
SB9
star 9 if you do. Or press in the corner, your upper right-hand corner, and you can raise your hand also. So seeing no other public comments. Do we have any response to to the one public comment we had? Okay. I'm going to go on to number 6, discussion and possible motion and community impact statement with respect to increasing the speed of cannabis licensing changes. And hopefully everybody has seen the council file and the original motion on this. And I'm going to read you a proposed motion that I would like to bring. Stand by. And here it is. The board of the Studio City Neighborhood Council, SCNC, opposes Council File 21-1083 unless amended to include the ineligibility to apply for new licenses or change of address licenses in communities like Studio City, for example, that have already reached their quota of Department of Cannabis Regulation, DCR licenses. and I tell you, the reason I wrote it this way is because, you know, our land use committee just has, in the last year or so, has had all these applicants coming wanting to get into Studio City or move from another location into Studio City. And the fact is, we've reached our quota and we waste our time hearing these people in these meetings. So this council file, I really want them to, again, amend what they want to do here. I don't mind them streamlining the process for people getting permits, but only for people getting permits that are eligible to get into a community like ours. And I'm just tired of these people. They go on applying, and when we're already full up, and then Lisa has to waste time on it. So that's why I wrote this the way it is. The motion that they want to do here needs to include this. So anyway, does anybody have any comments on this?
Yeah, I do have one comment, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
This isn't any kind of amendment or anything. It's merely a question. Is there a resource, the Department of Cannabis, do they have a resource where you can, it's either a document or some kind of website that can show the quotas being met? Like, say, I think Lisa said in one of the land use meetings, there's like 8 is the quota in Studio City. I might be misremembering, but there was a certain
8 or
amount
9.
There's 9
or 8.
Or 8. Well, okay. Is there some place you can look at and say, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, there's 8 of them, no more. And can that be represented in the motion as a reference, saying, look, we've already met our quota based on this document or this resource or these records, that the motion can point to a specific location where somebody can look at and say, okay, Studio City has enough cannabis shops. That's it. Is there anything like that?
I totally agree. And how about if we add on to this motion? Let's see. About a quota list. A quota list for each community must also be supplied.
I would say above all else. I think that would be the first thing you say, like, okay, have they met their quota? Yes, end of discussion. If they haven't met their quota, okay, now we can continue with the application process. That should be the first thing on the application process. It is quite a detailed application process. I was kind of reading it, and there's a lot of, in the code, there's a lot of steps you have to take, but these steps shouldn't even be taken if that community has already met its quota. So you'd have to wait until one cannabis store leaves, and then there'll be a waiting list of sorts, like I don't know, for a concert or something or whatever.
I'm really wondering the part, basically saying limiting the transfers, because they allow that with liquor. I'm wondering basically if people are going to complain and tie us up with appeals. So, hey, you allow liquor store to do it, or 5 have changed hands, and it's not fair. I'm just concerned with dealing with appeals.
Barry, Jeff Carter.
Yeah, I'm writing. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I just, my problem with this whole thing is I will admit that when I was on the board years ago, there was a motion regarding medical marijuana, and I did vote for that. So what I'm about to say may seem inconsistent. My problem is, as a lawyer or whatever, not a California lawyer, but just generally, the federal law does not permit the sale of any of this stuff. And So I do not, I searched, but I did not see any opinion of the city attorney. I'm sure he's done one and it's filed somewhere. He's very efficient, but even if there is an opinion, you know, we go back to Marbury versus Madison, 1803, the federal law as pronounced by the Supreme Court is the trumps everything. Hate to use the word Trump, but it's applicable here. Mm-hmm. And so my problem is that this is, I have seen no document or anything that indicates that whatever any state does, and they're doing it, is actually legal, other than medical use. That's a different story. And so that is a problem for me. I'm not a strict constructionist, but this isn't exactly brain surgery. As far as the issue of legality, it's a arguable question at best. Secondly, I'm worried that the people that are playing around with this, either as sellers or distributors or the council or us for that matter, have not seen, as I have, some of the science. We talk about relying on science, and I believe in that. The science with respect to what is on the market now. It is not what you may have smoked in your dorm rooms in 60s and 70s. This new breed or brand is extremely strong. It is physically much more dangerous, and it brings down GPAs according to studies. So I think that nobody has really looked at it from that standpoint. And so for those reasons, I'm not going to take a position on this, because if I vote yes or no, I am tacitly stating that the state or the city has the jurisdiction or the power or the competence to do any of this. So with all due respect, I know there's been a lot of work put into this, but I'm going to abstain for those reasons. It's a whole new product that nobody has really paid attention to. And number two, there is the ultimate legal issue. And so I just wanted to put that on the record. But I do respect the work that all of you have done and that I went through looking at this. And that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, and just remember, this is procedural in terms of licensing, and it's not about the content of what's being sold to an individual chemically. Scott,
can I respond to that? That's precisely the problem. All of this is made to look, even the use of the word cannabis, it's a marketing and public relations sort of thing. So I understand what you're saying, Barry, but once you're in it, you're in it. And so I will abstain when we vote. But thank you. Right. I understand what you're saying.
Scott?
Thank you, Barry. I just want to point out that the council file and the whole premise for this is not about any of the things that you just mentioned, Jeff. It's about racial equity. And they're looking to streamline the process in the name of racial equity. I appreciate all the points you made with federalism, and John Marshall has made his decision. Now let him go enforce it. things like that. I knew that would get you to laugh. But this is to speed up the process for the purpose of racial equity. The process is going to be sped up. It's been a mess since Prop 64 was passed between the state regulators and the city regulators. And I'm sure you've seen in the news, there have been tremendous efforts just to crack down on the illegal pot shops that are almost impossible to close. They have to dig out and cut the water off, the sewer, the electricity. They can't even shut down the illegal ones. So it's pretty much here to stay. It's not going anywhere. As far as the safety aspect, the licensed shops don't generally sell the vaping products that have the vitamin E acetate, which are destroying people's lungs. At least there's some measure of testing and safety. And I appreciate Barry's concern about all of the applications that go through for jurisdictions that have already met their quota. It just seems absolutely pointless that we would even need to mention this to the city, but based on the mishandling of the way the state and the city and other cities as well has handled the legalized cannabis, at least in California, and what, 24 states now? I mean, there's legalized psychedelic mushrooms. In California, decriminalized meth, heroin, crack, you name it. It's all been decriminalized. So the drugs are here. I think it's a good addition, so we don't go through the process. And to Brandon's point, I totally agree that if a community has reached its quota, per the publicly available database that either needs to be created or we need the link for it, the application shouldn't even be considered. And just one other point, maybe to what Richard said, I don't know if the transfers are the same with cannabis as for liquor. I don't know if the communities have caps and limits on the number of cannabis versus number of liquor stores. And there aren't any black market, at least that I know of, bootleggers selling black market alcohol. But if there are any, let me know. Thanks.
May I just
anybody
say a
else?
Quick word?
Yeah.
On the last land use meeting, of course, we shot down all 4 applications. So yes, it's a problem, but it's probably not going to take that much committee time. Just say no, as Nancy Reagan said.
Yeah.
No, Scott, I appreciate everything you said. And I don't disagree with a lot of it. If there is a racial component here, that should be addressed by the city attorney or the attorney general or whoever. But I still have to be consistent that maybe the hobgoblins of small minds, and maybe mine is small, but I understand what you're saying, but I think this will pass 5-1. 5-5.
Okay.
5-0, whatever.
Do we
Anybody else?
There might be a CBN thing that's going to follow this up?
Well, we're supporting this council file for the diversity thing, but we want them to add what I've written in. So to me, the diversity thing, it's great that we're supporting it, but I want to use this to get this in about all these people applying to us continuously. And the reason they keep doing it is because they think they're going to get past us. And, you know, one of these days they are. So anyway.
May I add something for maybe a future government affairs committee meeting? Maybe not this one, because it's I'll use a city attorney's term, germane to the motion, but not necessarily the motion itself. There should be a request for action to demand a database showing quotas. Each community, how many pot shops for each community has a community met the quota? Because if somebody comes to us and says we want to bring our case to the land use, all we have to do is show them the link and say, sorry, we've met our quota. There's no more room in Studio City for you, according to the city of Los Angeles or county. I don't know who handles it. I'm sure it's the city. But maybe there should be a request for action to have the city council, if there isn't already a database that's publicly accessible showing how many pot shops are in a specific community, perhaps there should be. I don't know how difficult that would be. So maybe that's something we should address in a future meeting.
Okay, my motion's going to have exactly what you want. When I read it, it's going to have exactly what you just asked for. Anybody else? Okay, let me read it. The board of the Studio City Neighborhood Council, SCNC, opposes Council File 21-1083 unless amended to include both the ineligibility to apply for new licenses or change of address licenses in communities, in parentheses, like Studio City, for example, that have already reached their quota of Department of Cannabis Regulation, DCR, licenses, and a quota list for each community must also be supplied by DCR to all potential applicants before applying. So do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Scott. Any further discussion?
My question is, if you're getting rid of transfers, that might cause a problem when everything else is fine. That's all.
Say that again.
If you're going to all of a sudden say somebody can't change their address, I think that's going to cause hassles, but maybe not.
We're just saying you can't transfer into a community that's already reached its quota.
But it sounded like the way it was written, you couldn't do an inter-community transfer. That's what it sounded like to me.
It says you can't get a new license or change your address on your license to come into a community that's quoted out, period.
Okay, I missed the coming to the community because I'm concerned basically somebody wants to just get a nicer place, you know?
Yeah. Well, we're not saying that in Studio City, one of our 8 or 9 can't transfer their address to another location in Studio City.
Maybe
because that doesn't change the quota.
Maybe you put within the boundaries of a specific community, like the boundaries of Studio City. That word boundaries might lock in Studio City to alleviate some confusion.
So where would you put that?
I'm not the attorney here. You got Jeff and you got Richard. I don't know, but
I'm just gonna, I know where I'm gonna say it. I know. So both the ineligibility to apply for new licenses or change of address licenses within the boundaries of communities like Studio City.
Gary?
Yeah.
Could we say within the boundaries of neighborhood council districts or whatever you want to call it? Those are the real boundaries, aren't they?
Yeah.
There aren't, I mean, Studio City doesn't
within the boundaries of neighborhood council districts, like Studio City, for example.
That's, I think that's more, because there are boundaries.
So just let me read you this first sentence that is the only thing we changed. The board of the Studio City Neighborhood Council, SCNC, opposes Council File 21-1083, unless amended to include the ineligibility to apply for new licenses or change of address licenses within the boundaries of neighborhood council districts, then in parentheses, like Studio City, for example, and then we go on with the rest of it.
If transferring in the boundaries should be okay, this is coming out of the going into the boundaries due to the problem, not transferred within the boundary.
Just transferring maybe from one boundary to another, from one area, crossing boundaries.
Mm-hmm. New applications or transfers that affect the quota within the boundaries. That go over the quota within said boundaries.
See the quota.
Sounds good.
That exceed the quota, yes.
Okay.
I was just thinking maybe the quota part
of address or change of address licenses.
Yeah, I was just thinking maybe the quota part. I think the quota part's the most important part because, you know, you're talking about racial equality. You're talking about streamlining the process because there's a backlog of applications, but that's not really the point in terms of what we care about here in Studio City. Other parts of the city, that might be a problem. Here, it's about quotas. So yes, racial equality is fantastic and streamlining the process because of the backlog, but if you're already quoted out, it doesn't matter, which is the case here in Studio City, which is what we care about.
Yeah, I think we can leave it as is. Okay. I have a second on this change that we made to within the boundaries of neighborhood council districts.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? Okay. We'll take the vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Yes or say yes. I'm a yes.
Yes. Scott Mandel, yes.
Yes.
Okay. So any no's and any abstentions? I'm sorry, Jeff, what were you?
I'm sorry, I muted myself by mistake. This is Jeff Carter, and I do abstain with respect.
Okay, so we have a vote of 5-0-1 for one abstention. Thank you. So moving on to number 7, discussion and possible motion, community impact statement with respect to regulating vacation rentals in non-primary homes. This is another council file different from the one that we did last month. And I'll read you. Basically, this motion is taken from the city's motion. The board of the Studio City Neighborhood Council supports Council File 18-1246 to 1, limit the impact and growth of dedicated rentals with limits on licensing. This could include a citywide cap on permits based on the historic number of vacation rentals and vacant homes in LA, or the percentage of the city's housing stock dedicated to this activity. 2, set higher standards and registration requirements for vacation rental and non-primary home permits. These could include higher registration fees and a stricter license revocation process. Include ways to incentivize short-term rental and vacation platforms to partner with the city on registration, data sharing, and 3 strikes enforcement against irresponsible hosts who repeatedly violate quality of life laws, including potential platform agreements that outline benefits for platforms for supporting the city's enforcement goals. It is critical to create clear rules and regulations to control the growth of this industry, protect critically needed housing for actual residents of Los Angeles, and address valid community concern about the abuses. So I know for me, I've seen, I don't just, say people don't have the right to rent short-term property rentals, but they have to do it with regard for the neighborhood and the quality of life issues. And we've all seen and heard so many issues with party houses, quote unquote, and other things. It's just that when I came across this, I thought, this is one, and we killed two birds with one stone by supporting this. We also maybe take some of these illegal rentals off the market, perhaps so they can be rented long term to people who actually live here and can't find a place to live. So, to me, it serves two purposes here. I'll open it up to the committee. Anybody on this one?
Yeah, I'm wondering if
go ahead.
Should we try to suggest a transit occupancy tax to raise the money for the enforcement? Because not much enforcement looks like.
Well, by supporting this motion, the motion calls for looking into ways to fix this, and that includes, like they said, higher standards and registration requirements, which, and it says could include higher registration fees. So I think by supporting this motion, we're already supporting the people that are going to look into possibly changing the fees on some people.
Okay. Just
okay.
wondering, because you have things like rent stabilization, which is very used to collecting money from people who rent out their properties.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Scott.
Thanks, Barry. As you can see, the name of the council file indicates this has been going on for almost 3 years. And before that, the city was trying, just like what we were discussing with cannabis, trying to figure out how to regulate this market. They like to pass ordinances that then they have absolutely no idea how to enforce. And I totally support this. And again, it's just sort of mind-boggling that at this stage of the game, that this has been a council file since almost 3 years ago. They're getting the city attorney to help explain how to enforce some of the most basic rules of our society, and that's the rental market. And at least they're mentioning the short-term and vacation rentals, which seems to favor the non-sophisticated real estate investors rather than the conglomerates and corporate type that are buying properties for the purpose of exploiting the market for profit. So I think this is great. I just think it's another misfeasance and maybe some malfeasance on behalf of the people who love to write these laws, and then years later they're trying to figure out how to enforce it. Again, with the party houses, just like with the cannabis dispensaries, they've had to resort to cutting off utilities and all kinds of other measures to get enforcement. So they do this without any teeth, and at least I think it's good to be supportive of maybe getting the city attorney to try to get it right. So I think I support this. Thanks.
Thanks. Go ahead, Brandon.
Go after the realtors. That's all I have to say about that, because this reminds me a lot about, like, say, sports management groups that go after a college player, and by the time he's in the major leagues, with the NBA, NFL, it's the college that gets busted, not him, not the sports management company. I'm not a realtor, and I don't know the market very well, but the realtors have to know they're selling to conglomerates. They have to know they're selling them to pension funds and investment groups. They have to know they're not selling them to families and real people. They have to know this. They have to know that a family who wants a house and they're ready to close the house, suddenly a company comes in and buys it for the sake of renting it out continuously or whatever. I mean, there really should be a family first orientation when it comes to real estate here. And it starts with the people who are selling the houses, the realtors, the ones who are in the middle, who are looking to make as much profit as possible. And like what Scott said, I used to walk up and down the hill. I still do on the south side of the boulevard. There was a time where there were a ton of for sale signs. Suddenly, within a couple of weeks, they're all gone. And then I start reading reports, articles that these pension funds who are looking to make their 6 or 7% to pay off the pensions are buying real estate left and right as a long-term investment. These aren't real people buying these homes. These aren't families looking for their first home. These are companies. It has to stop there. I don't know if you could stop somebody who's going to be in New York half of the year and LA half of the year from renting out, but you could stop these no face, no name conglomerates from buying real estate left and right and edging families out of their first home. Just something.
So true. Jeff.
I just want to, I think the last point that he made, I'm assuming that this does not, if I decide, and I never have done it, but let's say I'm going to go somewhere for 3 months and I'm in my house. This has nothing to do with that. I can rent my house to somebody or let somebody stay here if I want to. This does not affect that. It's a good faith transaction, arm's length, and it's done. Am I right on that? We're not banning that.
Yeah. No.
And let's say
you're correct.
Okay, good. And let's say that I have a house in. Okay, well, I agree with everything you said. I talked to people in all across the country this week, or ever since the agenda came out. New Orleans, it is a disaster area. There are people that down there that they don't even recognize their neighborhood because of this problem. And in Buffalo, near universities, it's the same problem. People are buying up old houses and then renting them out. And while it's great for the students, or it may not be, it may be ripoff, but I think the family first idea is very important. So I support this. Thank you.
Question.
Thank you.
If we're restricting the right to buy and operate it, aren't we also at the same time restricting somebody who wants to sell or rent? I don't think you really want a family to be able to be stuck where they are because they can't sell their house and buy another one.
Well, I mean, this isn't about selling a house. This is only about renting.
But I'm saying
on a short-term basis.
But there was a comment about having these companies buying up houses for the idea of quickly renting them out. And I'm wondering, if you're restricting buying, are you also restricting selling?
Go ahead, Jeff.
One other angle on this that I thought of the other day was, if you have a conglomerate or a corporation that, say, buys 15 houses in Studio City, I don't know what the definition of a hotel is. I didn't look it up, but isn't there a couple of smart lawyers could probably in the city attorney's office, you might be able to make the argument that they are a hotel chain, and that they come under the jurisdiction of that section of the code, and which I'm sure have much stricter things, and so that there'd be a couple of different ways you could go after these people. It's just an idea, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't support this.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, as to what Richard was saying, I think the law, I read it. I read the link that Barry supplied. I just think you could rent out your house, but there's procedures for doing that, I think. And they want to make tighter procedures. If you do want to go to Hawaii for about 4 months and rent out your home, I think It's almost like the last one you guys we were talking about in terms of whatever, where you would have to go through do some paperwork, and there's some regulatory procedures that currently don't exist. Am I correct, Barry, on that? They want to add more procedures. You could rent your home,
right?
But
yes, and that this motion is to saying research it and decide what that would be. And then they will come back to city council and there'll be another vote.
My hand is up.
So, oh, go ahead, Jeff.
So now we're saying there might be some restriction on a person renting their own house to somebody that they negotiate a contract with for a short period of time. Yes, I mean, I'm now
not
confused.
Not other than registering what you're doing with the city. And see, people are doing it now. You know, they'll do it for 2 months here, 4 months here, 5 months there, and it's continuous. Right. But you're not talking about doing. Yeah.
You want to make sure that if I did that, which I don't plan on doing, but if I did it, I'm not one of those guys, one of the bad guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
But of course, rent control never kicks in then.
That's right. You're free to do whatever you want. Frightening idea, but I think that would be the result. So I support this. But I think if somebody tried to limit, an owner's right to properly rent their own home, I think it would not, probably wouldn't stand up. But let's not worry about it.
Go ahead, Scott.
Yes, I think what they're trying to do is prevent mass purchases for the purpose of like Airbnb short-term rentals for people. I think to Richard's point, for people who may feel stuck, like say when Southern California, Los Angeles turns into like the Rust Belt, where those cities are literally giving away the empty homes. You can buy property and then traditionally rent it with leases in the rental market. What they're trying to, it seems to me, what they're trying to figure out is how to split the difference between people who are scooping up houses for the higher profit of the short-term rentals when it's not their primary home, or if it isn't their primary home, it sounds like the city wants them to do traditional rental agreements. And for people like who go off to Hawaii for 3 months and it is your primary home, it doesn't read anyway that the intent is to restrict those persons, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, I agree.
I agree.
Okay.
I just had one question.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
And
Rick.
Yeah, we have the Olympics in 7 years, which will be an orgy of people trying to find places to stay and being gouged. I don't know how, I mean, who knows what that'll look like.
Also, we might be affected by SB9 too. That's right, people having their house, building one or more accessory dwelling units, basically, and we're just going to affect that. Seems like it could easily do that.
Thankfully, the Olympics are only 17 days. Go ahead, Jeff.
Just one point of irony and maybe humor. The city council says that Los Angeles is a destination place. It is a incoming place, but if, as I wrote to a friend of mine, if you look at the places where people go, most of them are not in the city of Los Angeles. Most of them are in Burbank, Santa Monica, Beverly Hills. They're technically not in the city, but I was sort of got a little chuckle out of that. But otherwise, I'll call the question. if I may.
And by the way, the two top destinations, you'll be surprised by number 2. The first is Disneyland. The second is the beach at like Santa Monica and Venice.
Right. That's precisely my point. And West Hollywood.
Okay. The question has been called. I brought this motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Who was that? That was Scott?
I'll give it to
Brandon.
No, I'll give it to Scott.
Oh, Brandon? Okay.
Yes.
Scott did the last one.
I was muted.
Brandon.
It couldn't have been me.
I hacked Zoom.
All right. We will take a vote on this. All in favor of this motion supporting Council File 181246, raise your hand for yes or say yes.
Yes.
I'm a yes.
Yes.
Scott Mandel,
it's
yes.
Unanimous. And Jeff, you are a yes?
I am a yes.
Oh, thank you. So it is unanimous.
Just really quick, it has nothing to do with the vote, but I'm curious if there is an economic downturn and all these conglomerates have these houses, I wonder if they'd try to unload them all at the same time off their ledgers and tank the market. Just it's kind of interesting.
They might, or they might try long-term rentals.
Maybe. It's an interesting thought experiment what might happen.
Yeah. Okay. Going on to number 8, comments from committee members on subject matter within the committee's jurisdiction. Anybody on number 8?
Yeah, I do.
We kind of did some of this early on, but go ahead.
I think we should really do something about the family first thing, about really focusing on getting and on having homes. I know it's kind of a long shot because there's so much money involved in politics, but to try to get perhaps the city to put the screws to realtors to give families a fair shot at homes over conglomerates. I don't know if it's possible or feasible or even they'll even look at it, but it's worth a shot. It's a good idea.
You know what else it's been for the last 20 years, making house prices go up, and that's the fact that spec builders, like in Studio City, have been buying 1,200 to 1,700 square foot homes. They buy them for, say, now currently between 1.2 and 1.5 million. Tear them down. They build, to the max, which is less than it was 10 years ago because we got baseline mansionization. But, for example, I'm in a 1,700 square foot house, and my next door neighbor was similar. He was like 102 and died, and his family sold the house to spec builders. They tore it down, and it's now maxed out for what can be built there at like 3,900 square feet, 2-story, tiny backyard now. Thank God it's to the north of me and not to the south, so it hasn't affected my sunlight. But that's really what's been going on in Studio City to the detriment of first-time home buyers. And it, in my neighborhood and neighborhoods that are not in the hills of Studio City, I think it's totally changed the socioeconomic makeup of neighborhoods. I mean, I was in a neighborhood that people talk to each other. Now it's like these McMansions, they have a security gate around them. It's all electrified, light. They're all lit up that, whereas the other houses don't have lights on them. It's just totally changed the physical characteristic of the neighborhood. So that's been a problem too. Go ahead, Jeff. Rick.
So I read a bunch of stuff that looking forward 10, 15 years. And also if you look historically, the hot markets are something always happens to wreck the market. And we have, political stuff on the horizon. We have climate stuff on the horizon. And somebody earlier in this meeting mentioned that, enforcing any of this stuff is the problem, that corporations are going to do what they're going to do. But there might be a silver lining that corporations are the ones who will be holding the bag with the next time the market crashes instead of families. But it's terrible now, but in 2032, when the entertainment industry abandons LA for Vancouver or telecommuting, that maybe it's better that families don't own $2.5 million houses.
Yep. Go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, I was just I just wanted to comment on what you said. I think the last Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council Board meeting, I think Jeffrey Prang, is he the city controller? I think Jeffrey Prang. He likes gloating about himself, and he was talking about how, housing prices are up, real estate prices are up, it's adding tax dollars to the city, it's fantastic. I really wanted to chime in and ask a series of questions as to how many of these homes were owned by corporations, how many people bought the homes. Do you have any data on that? Because according to Prang, when housing prices go up, it's good for the city. And if that's a little microcosm of how the city believes, how they feel about home prices, they're only going to go up. That's what they want.
And he's the county property tax assessor. But, Gail Steinberg, who's a realtor who used to be on the SCNC board, and you may see her sign on bus benches. But I often talk to her when she's had a sale, and she's like one of the good real estate agents who tries to sell a home to a family that can move in and not tear it down. But unfortunately, the people that buy it have deep pockets and usually can outbid. They'll always be one bid higher than the family that wants to buy it, unfortunately. So. We're on our agenda. I did number 8 twice, so it's number 8 and 9. So we are basically at a time to adjourn. I'll make that motion. Do I have a second to adjourn?
Okay.
Okay, second from Rick. So we are adjourned, and our next meeting will be Wednesday, November 3rd, so at 6 p.m. And hopefully all our motions will go before the board the third Wednesday of October. I'm pretty sure they will. And I think we'll be fairly high on the agenda because we've waited. So, all right.
Happy Halloween.
You, everyone.
Happy Halloween.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Thanks for everyone attending. All right. Bye.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Bye. Thank you.